What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So on today's video, we're going to be doing something that has to do with CNCing, but we're not going to be actually doing anything with the CNC. So I get a lot of questions, a lot of people that comment now that they got their CNC machine built and on their desk and ready to go, now what? I kind of want to help with that and answer maybe a little bit of questions and see kind of some stuff that you're going to need before you even really turn on your CNC. Now you can get your CNC brand new and you're really anxious and you're really excited. Boom, turn it on and you start doing some stuff. That's totally great. But once you start getting into desktop CNCing, there are some things that you should purchase, that you should buy and have kind of at your arm's length. That way, it'll make your projects a lot more easier to measure, to hold down, to just cut, and all these little things that people don't think of when they go out and buy their first CNC. And that was me. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. And I'm gonna go over some stuff that I have lined up here. Now, I'm not even gonna turn on this machine on this first part. Once this gets done, I think in the next few days, I'm gonna do another video where I actually hook up the CNC machine and I'm gonna show you using easel, basically starting like a first project. Everything from designing it to measuring it to how to use the Z probe and all that stuff. That'll be in the next video. But this video is basically what do I do now? But I'm going to kind of go over each thing and explain what each thing will do while you're CNCing, and then we'll go from there. So let's go ahead and sit down and I'm going to point out each one. If you think of something that other people can use and need, go down below, put that comment of, hey, don't forget you need this, because I might have forgotten something. So let's help everybody out with this video and get people started and get them in the right direction for desktop CNCing. All right, so let's go ahead and set up the camera and go through each thing. Here we go. All right, guys, so let's start off with the very first thing. Now that you got your CNC built, now what? What you're gonna need is, obviously, let's start off with scrap wood. What I like to do is just go to the big box store and get you some scrap wood. They have a couple different things that you can get. You can get these nice piece of panelings. I think they're like 15 bucks. They're probably about 48 inches by maybe 18 inches, and it's a good way to start to get some flat wood. It's pine, and it's really, really nice. The other thing you can do is get some oak from them as well. It's a little bit more expensive. It is a hardwood. It is really nice for doing some kind of really permanent projects for people. They definitely have oak, but if you really want to get something like hard maple, soft maple, really those specialty woods, you definitely have to go to a specialty wood shop. Unless you have some really just scrap wood laying around your house, that's kind of what you need. So you definitely need some wood. So the next thing you're going to need to do is you need to find a way how to hold down your wood. You need a way to, or whatever material you're cutting. You could be cutting plastic, some aluminum. You definitely need a way to secure that to your spoil board. You definitely have a couple options. We'll start with the first option that usually comes with your CNC, and that is clamps. There are different style clamps that come with your machines, but I really like these type of clamps right here. They have a little swivel up and down, and they're spring loaded, and they're just a really nice clamp, opposed to the clamps that usually come with the machines. But sometimes you get these. I actually got these with a couple different machines that I had received in the past, but these are the ones you can actually buy these on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description to these specific clamps. I really like these a lot, and I actually use these when I have to clamp, which is very few and far between, because the next thing to use is the tape and glue method. The tape and glue method is basically blue tape, and then you have some glue with some accelerator spray, which I purchased this at the Home Depot. This is a kit that comes like this together, and it's like 3.5 ounces with the accelerator spray for only 16 bucks. I know you can purchase this on Amazon, so if you don't have access to any of that, get you some accelerator spray and blue painter's tape, and that will hold down your material probably the best way, in my opinion. If you put one piece of tape on your piece of wood or material that you're cutting, then you put another piece on your spoil board, and then you do the glue method and you hold it down. What I'll do is I'm going to be using this in the next video in this 2 to 3 part series. So stay tuned for that if you're not sure how to do the blue tape method. And then we have one other method, which I have not done. I purchased on Amazon. It's still brand new in the package. I purchased this woodworking tape. It's basically a double-sided masking tape. Instead of using CA glue, it's basically two-sided. So you take a piece off, you stick it to your material that you're cutting, and then you stick it onto your spoil board, and it will hold your piece in place while your end mill and your bit is doing its job. I'll tell you why that this is a really good method opposed to using clamps. When you use clamps, you tend to have this thing sticking up. And if you're not paying attention, your end mill can hit this and break an end mill right in half. Anyway, so these do have their advantages where you can really crank the material that you're holding down really, really tight, opposed to this. I've never had an issue with the blue tape method where it actually came free. It won't work with metals or anything like that. If you're doing any kind of metal cutting, you should be using a clamp, and they also have vices that you can purchase. I really don't do a whole lot of metal cutting, so I don't own a vise. But a vise is another option to clamp down your material. So the next thing is, I would get you some scrapers. And the reason being is once your material is done and it's done cutting, you need a way to get your piece of wood or the material peeled off of your spoil board if you're using that blue tape method, where if you have these scrapers, you can get it underneath and pop up the material and peel it up really easily. So having these within an arm's reach, it's definitely a help, and you can get these for a couple bucks. Okay, another good thing is you're going to need some way to do some measuring, and that's what we're going to get into next. I know this might sound weird, I use both systems of measurement, the metric and standard, because I like to do long lengths in inches, and if I'm doing really small measurements, I like to use millimeters. So there's a couple different tape measures that you can find. If you look right here, this tape measure has fractions on it. You know, it has, don't have my glasses, but it has 1/8, 1/4, 3/8, 1/2, so on and so forth. And you can see right there, it's a really nice tape measure in the fact that it kind of gives you everything. So if you have your piece of wood, my brain, it's very difficult to figure out that this would be 122 millimeters across. It's much easier for me to measure and say that this is 11 1/2 of an inch. So 11 1/2 inches across by 23, 24 inches across this way. My brain is easier to say, okay, that's 12 inches, that's 24, that's 36, whatever, opposed to using millimeters. So with that being said, having some tape measures that you can kind of follow and have on hand is really good, because whenever you're doing your designing and your piece of material, you need to make sure that you input the correct dimensions into your computer software that you're using, whether it be easel or candle or anything like that. You need to make sure that you have the correct dimensions in. Tape measures are very important. The other thing that you need, that I feel like you need, is a really good calipers. These are super important to have. Let's see, will it show you? Yes. Because when you're measuring the thickness of your actual piece of wood, how deep you're gonna cut, how thick of the material that you're cutting, being very precise is the key. And in my mind, I can tell millimeters and a fraction of a millimeter is a lot easier to show than fractions. Let these calipers do the math for you. This is exactly 20.1 millimeters, 20.3 millimeters. So what I would do is I would kind of measure across the board a little bit, do a couple different locations, and get the general dimensions of that thickness of wood. And then I'll cut it in half, or I'll add a little bit more so that I know that the end mill is going to cut all the way through. So for instance, if I'm cutting a piece of wood and I want it to cut all the way through, I'll put 20.5 just to make sure that I know for a fact that it's going to cut all the way through. So having a good pair of calipers to measure the different thicknesses of wood, you're not going to get the correct measurements. You definitely need a pair of calipers. So for instance, this one, which I know is 19 point something, there it is right there. And every time you go to the store too, these are going to be just a little bit different. Every single time, they're going to be a little bit different. So even if you buy the same piece of wood over and over and over and over again, every time you input this piece into your system, you have to remeasure. You have to make sure, because your cut could be off by a fraction of a millimeter and it's not going to cut all the way through, and that's very frustrating. You bought your desktop CNC, now what? You need to have some bits. You need to have something to cut with. So usually these machines that they come with, they usually only come with one or two different type of end mills. Well, one end mill doesn't do all the jobs. You have different degree of bits. You have different depths of cuts. You have different flattening bits. Like, there's so many different of bits. Here's another one. Check this out. This one is one that I use all the time. This is it's 1/4 inch shank with an 1/8 inch thickness of a cut, a 1.5 inch depth. So I can cut stuff like this all the way through. You could see right there, it will cut all the way through with no problem. And another thing is to tell if you have an upcut or a downcut bit. What you want to do is put it in your hand. You take your hand like this and you start turning your thing clockwise. So in this case, my finger is kind of running down the bit. I'm turning it clockwise. If I start at the bottom, it wants to go down. So I'm going to start up here. I'm pinching just a little bit and I'm turning, and it's making my fingers go down. So this is a downcut bit. If I were to do this and my fingers were, and I turn it and it goes up, this would be an upcut bit. So you need upcuts and you need downcuts. So you need to kind of build your arsenal. And there's so many out there on Amazon, it's limitless. Very important, make sure you have a couple brushes on hand. This is actually the brush that came with the machine. And this is a brush that I use for chalk paint. But you definitely need these to clean off your machine. You need to make sure that you're cleaning your machine off with all these little nooks and crannies and stuff like that, because you definitely get sawdust. So having some brushes on hand to clean and keep your machine clean and running in optimal performance is a key. So make sure you have some cleaning tools and, you know, air tools and stuff like that on hand as well. Razor blade. Got to have a razor blade. A lot of times when your machine is done and you're done cutting, you're going to have little bits and you're going to sand and do some sanding, but sometimes having a razor blade to cut areas where it didn't cut perfectly or cut all the way through, having a razor blade on hand is always a good thing to have. That way you can clean up some of your cuts. Make sure you have a pencil. You're going to use it to do a lot of things with. You're going to have to find the center of your material. So you'll have your ruler or your straight edge and you find your center like that. And that's where your end mill will want to start off if you're going to do a center cut, if that's where you are starting your material. I do that quite often sometimes to make sure that I'm centering something perfectly opposed to doing over here. So you'll want to center your material. You'll use that. Another thing is to make a straight line across your spoil board. That way you know how far to put your material as well. So having a pencil on hand, it's kind of a no-brainer. I think you can find these just laying around your house. Usually your machine will come with grease. If it doesn't, I highly suggest you go online and you buy some basically some grease for your, if it's linear driven or ball screw driven or anything like that, you definitely want to make sure after you're brushing off and cleaning all of your materials up, you want to make sure that you're greasing your machine so that, again, it keeps it in optimal performance. Okay, here's something that you absolutely don't need, but I have here, and I haven't even used them myself, but I want to test out the RPM of my spindle. So I ended up purchasing these, and I think I might do a little quick video on this as well as this to kind of see how they both work, because I don't normally use this, but I wanted to purchase it for this video as well as doing the test to see which one's better, whether it's the blue tape method or this. This one might be a little bit easier because you're not having any glue. Every once in a while, no, it's all good. Sometimes the glue though from this will lock this tight, and it's a pain in the butt to get this off because I use this so much. I got to use pliers and break it free. So another good thing about this is where it's not glued shut or anything like this, this might be a much easier process. This ran me about, I think, 18 bucks for this roll of tape. Okay, back to this right here. This is the tachometer, digital tachometer. Basically, it will help you determine the RPMs of your spindle. There's a little piece of tape that you put on the spindle, and then you shoot this at that, and it will tell you your true RPMs. That way you know for a fact how fast your RPMs or how fast your spindle is actually moving. You're not really trusting the software or the spindle gauge that's on the top. Sometimes you can actually really gauge and determine how fast your spindle really is moving. So this is probably something that you will eventually want to get, but it's not something that you definitely need right now. If you don't have a computer, I highly recommend that you get some kind of laptop. A lot of these machines have offline controllers, and you don't necessarily need a computer to run your machine. You can get really inexpensive laptops on eBay, on Amazon, Walmart, whatever, a couple $100. I do a lot of my designing and everything directly on my laptop, and then I connect it directly to this. I don't really use the offline controller so much. The big thing is just make sure your laptop is off of sleep mode. There's nothing worse than having your computer go on sleep mode or shut off, and make sure it's plugged in as well. And then all of a sudden, 3/4 of a way through a cut, it just shuts off and your machine shuts off. There's nothing worse than that. and this is probably going to be one of the last things, I highly recommend some kind of dust collection system. You got your desktop CNC, now you need a way to keep it clean. Now you need something. So up here I have the HFS 800 from FoxAlien. It's an amazing dust collector, and I will put a link in the description as well to that, but definitely need to get some kind of dust collection. That way it keeps all those bits and pieces from flying all over the place. If you're doing this inside your house, it'll keep it clean. If you're doing it inside a workshop, it'll keep it clean. So make sure you get some kind of dust collection system. You can use anything as cheap as, and let me show you. Right here, I have a 5-gallon bucket with a $30, I don't even think it was 30 bucks. I think it was maybe $20 at Walmart. It's basically a shop vac that I have plugged in, and here is the dust boot that connects to the spindle. And when my machine turns on, that turns on and it sucks all of the stuff and it keeps it super, super clean. Hopefully that these little things will get you started. These are must-haves. These are things that I have to have by my side on the shelf at all times whenever I'm CNCing. I use these pretty much daily when it comes to my CNCing. Anywhere from the blue tape method to the scrapers, to the calipers, to the tape measures, to my brushes and my grease. Really the only thing I don't use is obviously this, and I have not used this, but it kind of coincides with the blue tape method. You need something, you need one of those. If there is something that I missed, go down in the comments and plug that in. Say, hey, you definitely need this as well. And if it's something that I'm thinking that I missed, I'm definitely gonna go out and get it as well. So I might be missing a lot of things that might make my life a lot easier, but hopefully this will make your guys' life a lot easier too. So, all right guys, if you like this video, go down below, give it a thumbs up. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel. I got so much more coming to this channel that have to do with CNCing as well as other workshop projects as well. All right guys, that is it. Until that next video, make sure y'all do one thing, stay awesome. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.